Everyone.
Good evening, Rabbi.
We are learning Parsha. This week's Parsha is Parshas Toldos, Tavshin Pei Vav, and we'll be starting at Perek Chaf Hey, chapter 25, Pasuk Chaf Zayin, verse 27. So at this point in the Parsha, Yaakov and Esav have been born, and the Torah says, "Vayigdalu hana arim," and the lads grew up. Vahi Esav, and Esav became Ish Yedei Sayid, a person who knew hunting. Ish Sada, a man of the field. The Yaakov Ish Tam, Yaakov was a wholesome man. Yoshev Harlem, sitting in tents. So on the words that Esav was Yodei Sayid, so simply the straightforward interpretation means he was a hunter. He knew how to hunt. But Rashi brings down an explanation on the words knowing hunting. That what that means is, what kind of hunting we're talking about? We're talking about figurative hunting. We're talking about figurative trapping. Not trapping animals, but trapping people. He knew how to trap and to trick his father with his mouth. Meaning, he fooled his father about who he was. And he did it with his mouth. How did that, and really that's going to be, kind of based on the next verse we're about to read. But Rashi here comments, how did he trick him or trap him with his mouth? The Shayaloi, Asa would ask him, Abba, Father, how does one tithe salt and straw? Tithing is what we separate from our grain. And he would ask, how does one do so when it comes to salt and when it comes to grain? Not grain, straw. Now, halachically, you do not have to tithe salt, and you don't have to tithe straw. Salt is not a food on its own. Straw is not a food. It's an animal food. So these things were essentially exempt from having tithe separated from them. But he was asking, how do you do it? Kasavar aviv shemedaktik b'mitzvahs. So his father thought that he was very meticulous in mitzvahs because he wanted to know how to go ahead and tithe salt and straw. Now, again, salt and straw are things that you don't have to separate from. And he was still asking. And that was an expression of how he was trying to show his father that he was meticulous with mitzvahs. I guess one way of learning what that means is that even though, it was exempt, he still wanted to do it. So he wanted to know how to do it. And this was how he's going to give the impression that he was very meticulous with mitzvahs. Okay? And that was, and the pasuk says, as Rashi is explaining, that this was really a way of tricking his father, which sounds like he knew he was tricking his father. This is how he wanted to make his father think he was righteous. And apparently he did a pretty good job of it, because his father, to some degree, definitely did think that he was sincere. It may have very well been that he knew that Esav wasn't that learned, if he asked that kind of question. Or, again, maybe he is learned, but he is trying to go even more than the letter of the law. And apparently, Esav, whichever way we can imagine his behavior was right now, it was a behavior that, at least in front of his father would think that this kind of a question showed he was meticulous with mitzvahs. Okay, so I want to share with you a question. So it says he asked about salt and straw, taking tithes from salt and straw. If he wanted to look meticulous and he wanted to look careful about doing mitzvahs, could he ask the question about something else? Was there some other part of the laws of Torah that they knew and that they were practicing at some degree? Excuse me?
You can ask anything.
Right. So why are we only mentioning the question about tithing straw and salt?
Maybe he will ask another question.
So why are we mentioning the tithe and the salt? You should just say he asked a lot of questions, or he asked whatever questions, and the questions that he asked were meticulous. Shows how he was meticulous. Why is the example here? Is this just one example of many? Maybe that's what it is. It's one example of many. And Rashi, which is really quoting a medrash, is just for some reason, using that example. But it's interesting that the example used here is this specific example. Again, was this the only question? Probably not. There are probably other questions. Just one question is going to give this impression. So there were probably other questions. There very well could have been other questions. So why is this the example that's used to show Esav's ruse of meticulousness in mitzvahs? So I'm going to share with you a thought from a commentary called Shem Shmuel. So the Shem Shmuel was, his name was Rabbi Shmuel Bornstein, and he was the Hasidic Rebbe of Sachachev. Sachachev was a city west of Warsaw. It was in Poland. And it was a place of a Hasidic dynasty the city was called Sachachev, but that was also what the Hasidic dynasty was called, as many were based on the places where they were located. And Reb Shmuel Bornstein was the Sachachev Rebbe. He was born, I believe, in 1855, and he became Rebbe in 1910. And he passed away, I think, was in 1935. So this is and the commentary that he wrote on the Torah is called it Shem Shmuel, and very often this Reb Shmuel Bornstein, the Sachachev Rebbe, is referred to as the Shem Shmuel because of this work. It was a work on the Chumash. It was a work also on the holidays, on the Haggadah of Pesach, and it's a very well known and famous work. And so the Shem Shmuel explains in the following way. His explanation is that really everything in life boils down to two categories. And the categories are referred to in Torah literature as Ikar and Tafel. Ikar means the main, the essential, and Tafel means the secondary. The secondary that is subject or subsidiary to the Ikar, to the main thing. The Tafel is there to serve the Ikar. So, if you look through life, life is categorized in that way in many different ways. First of all, we have Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. We have this world and the next world. And our sages in Pirkei Avos say, "Hasken atzmacha beproiznar, teishikanas traklin." Prepare yourself in the how is that word? Prepare yourself in the corridor so you can get to the Great Hall. This world is compared to a corridor that's leading into Olam Haba, into the world to come, which is called the Great Hall. So that means that what's the Ikar? The Ikar is Olam Haba, the world to come. Because this world is temporary. Whatever we're doing in this world is leading us into what's going to be in Olam Haba, in the world to come, which is eternal life. And therefore, whatever we do in life towards Olam Haba, towards the world to come, is Ikar. That is paramount. That's essential. That's the main thing. And then the other things that we need in Olam Hazeh in this world are Tafel, are secondary to Olam Haba. We find a concept that, and this is an interesting concept, that when you talk about weekdays and Shabbos, Shabbos is considered the Ikar, that's the main, and all the other days are Tafel, are secondary, are subordinate to it. It's like the whole week is leading up to Shabbos. The week is our preparation going into Shabbos. Shabbos is the main thing, that's the Ikar, while the other days of the week are Tafel, or secondary. Okay, another example. You have in the laws of Tumah and Tahara, of purity and impurity, you have a halacha that if, let's say, a source of impurity touches a fruit, touches the flesh of a fruit, it's going to make it impure. Now, what if it touches the shell, or the peel of the fruit? So is that like touching the fruit itself? Or is it like you touched one thing and now the other thing touched the other thing? So the halacha is that the shell, what protects the fruit, the tafel, the secondary part, is considered like one. It's not considered part of the fruit itself. And therefore, when the impurity comes into contact with the shell, it's like coming into contact with the fruit itself. So the fruit is the ikar, that's the main thing, and the shell is the tafel, it's the secondary. It's the subsidiary to the main thing, it's there to serve it. So typically, when we have these categories of ikar and tafel, of the main and the secondary, The secondary is there to serve the main thing. Now, the primary thing. Now, when the secondary serves the primary, the secondary actually can get some of the characteristics of the primary, as we see in the example of we just said about the shell with the laws of purity and impurity. But going on a bigger level, when the 6 days of the week are a preparation for Shabbos, so then the sanctity of the primary day of Shabbos goes over to the weekday. It gets invested in the weekday. If the weekday is used as a preparation for Shabbos, then the sanctity of Shabbos goes into the weekday. If we use Olam Hazeh, this world, as a secondary, as a subsidiary to Olam Haba, to the world to come, then what happens is that the parts of our personal life that are secondary, meaning they're there to enable us to be able to do what we need to do to get to Olam Haba, then which concludes our physical needs and our physical involvement. We need, those are secondary. They are tuffle to the ikar, to the main thing, to what we need to get to Olam Haba. When you actually use those secondary things for the primary thing, then the sanctity, the greatness, those days get elevated. Those parts of our life, if we are using them as secondary to the primary, our Olam Hazeh, our this worldly matters, are being used for Olam Haba, for the world to come, then that now that elevates the secondary. Our physical actions become elevated because they are serving the main purpose, Olam Haba, the world to come. And the world as a whole is like that. The world as a whole, if the world is used in its secondary form for the purposes of serving the higher parts of life, of getting towards Olam Haba, then this world becomes infused and elevated with sanctity of Olam Haba. So the world is broken down into these two categories. Well, the same thing happens when we look at what Yaakov represents, what Esav represents. Yaakov represents the Jewish people. Yaakov represents those who serve God. He of the two sons is the primary son. Esav, who his endeavors are more on the physical, that's the kind of person he is. That doesn't necessarily make him lost, but basically it means he is secondary. He is there to serve the primary. All the physical endeavors that he does are meant to be able to be used to enable the spiritual pursuits of Yaakov to be able to be fulfilled. That's how the setup is meant to be. Yaakov is meant to be as is. Yaakov is the third of the patriarchs. He is the father of the Jewish people. Esav was not going to be part of that destiny, but he could have in some way been part of that destiny as a secondary in the sense of serving Yaakov, of the physical pursuits that will be there to enable the person of spirit to be able to get to the world to come, which would actually enable the secondary to reach levels in that way too, because he becomes elevated through that.
In this sense, all nation is secondary to Jewish?
Yeah. Yes. Now, it's very interesting. The Medrash gives an example. You know, this is a metaphor. The straw, the chaff, and the bran. Those are all the different parts of an ear of grain. You have the straw. I think that the straw is, well, I think it's the bottom of the bottom part. It's what the kernels are connected to. You have the chaff, which is what surrounds the kernels, or I'm not sure explain there's bran. I'm not sure how to explain each part. But they once had a dispute. Each one said to the other, "The field was planted because of me." Then the wheat came along and said, "Wait until the threshing is carried out, and we'll know for whom the field was really sown." Okay, so you get this metaphor, right? You got the stalk of grain, all the parts are still there, and they're arguing, okay, who's the main thing here? Who was the field planted for? And the wheat says, doesn't get into the argument, says, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. When things get cut down and things are threshed, we'll see what survives, what's kept, and what's thrown away. So this is also meant to be an example between, again, Yitzchak and Esav. I'm sorry, in between Yaakov and Esav, in the sense of what is the main thing and what's not the main thing. Now Yitzchak wanted to give the bracha to Esav, right? And the question is why? Why do I want to give the bracha to Esav? So the Shem Mishmuel explains that Yitzchak wanted to give the bracha to Esav because he wanted Esav to realize where does he fit into? Where is Yaakov and where is he? If Esav is going to get the blessings, which were the blessings of this world, because you see the blessings were to do with the heaven and the blessings of the earth, it was a physical blessing. So in essence, what Yitzchak was trying to give Esav the blessing is to he should realize that you are meant to be the secondary one. You're meant to be the one that will serve Yaakov. You'll enable him to get to where he needs to get in the world to come, and that will elevate you too. But the purpose of giving him the blessing was him to reason your part is the secondary part. Because the Shem Mishmuel is working with an approach that Esav is not just this wild guy who has no understanding of anything. He has understanding. He has the principles. He has the fundamentals. He knows what's going on. Just doesn't want to accept them. And Yitzchak, by giving him the blessing, is trying to impress upon him that his purpose is this world. You're secondary. As we know, Olam Haba, the world to come, and its pursuits are primary. The physical pursuits are secondary. They're there to enable us to be able to perform our pursuits for Olam Haba, for the world to come. But giving you the blessings was meant to be a lesson to him that you are meant to be secondary. At the end of the day, Rivka said, not going to work. He's not going to be secondary. He's not going to, and as we'll soon see, he doesn't like this setup. He's not interested in that setup. In his mind, he wanted to be the main thing. And in getting the blessings, in his mind, that was going to be the main thing. He wasn't ready to accept what Yitzchak wanted. So then the Shem B'Shmuel goes, now, after this is all said, that we have this explanation about these categories and where Yitzchak and where Yaakov and Esau fall into those categories. Now he goes back to explain why is it that we're focusing on Esau's question about the salt and the straw. Why is the focus on that? So he wants to say because that question really revealed what was going on in Esau's mind. Because essentially, why don't you tithe salt? Because salt is not a primary food. It's always there to enhance something else. Okay, straw, right, is secondary to the wheat. It's there for the wheat to be attached to as it's growing, but it's secondary to the wheat, and that's why. And so they're not really foods. They don't really have importance, and therefore you don't tithe them. You don't take meiser from them. But Esav says, how do you take meiser from them? No, the secondary is not secondary. The secondary is just as important. We should be tithing the secondary too. Let's not make these categories of primary and secondary. Everything should be primary. Everything can be primary. Even the things that seem to be of a lesser status, they can also be primary. And what he really was revealing was what's going on inside of him. He doesn't want to be the secondary. He doesn't like this idea of being secondary, of not being the primary. He wants to be for who he is as he is the primary. And that manifested itself in this question, right? Tithes the salt, tithes the straw. Don't make these primary and secondary things. You can tithe them all. Now, he was trying to make himself look like a tzaddik to his father. Okay, but the Medrash is focusing on Rashi, citing the Medrash, focus on this question because this question really revealed deep down what was going on in Esav. That the idea of not meisering, not tithing these things because they're really not important, because they're just there to serve the other thing, that was not a concept that he was comfortable with. Didn't like that concept.
So it's like a metaphor.
It's a metaphor of either a metaphor. It's a metaphor in the sense of, did he mean this metaphor? But maybe he did mean it, or maybe he was kind of revealing by the way he asked the question. But in essence, the Medrash and Rashi using this example of his question was because it was really showing what was going on inside of him. But that the idea of kind of pushing the secondary aside and saying no, it's not important. It's not as important. It doesn't need the Meiser. That's something that was not comfortable to him.
How can you? He's in secondary.
Excuse me.
How? Esav,
So I'm saying that's why I said before that Esav was not someone because apparently according to this in Yitzchak's house, right, it was understood. Yaakov, who was sitting and studying Torah, he's more important. The fact that it says Yitzchak loved Esav, many of the commentaries say, doesn't mean he didn't love Yaakov. It means, it can be interpreted as that Yitzchak had hope for Esav. He invested in Esav. He was hoping that something would come from Esav. And Esav was trying to show that, yeah, he would like to be like Yaakov. He's trying to be like that too. He wants to be part of that too. But there was an understanding that at the same time, look, Esav is in the field. He's running around and hunting and trapping. He's not part of the same pursuit. He's not the same person as Yaakov. And therefore, it was understood in that context that Yaakov is the main. He's the one studying Torah. He's the main. He's going to be the continuation of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And Esav is meant to be secondary to that. So Esav, if Esav understood that, and Esav never wanted to show his father, what do you mean I'm also spiritual? I also want to be part of that, right? And but deep down, the Medrash is telling us that Esav understanding this concept that existed within the home, that was understood within the home, that was not something he was comfortable with because he knew that's not what he really was. And knowing what it really was, he didn't want to be secondary. He wanted to be the primary. And this question was, as you said, Arthur, a kind of a metaphor. It was bringing out what exactly was going on inside of him.
Okay.
But the point is, as you said, Esav is not oblivious. He's not this wild guy that doesn't understand what's going on. He understands what's going on. You know, the example that I've given that I've mentioned many times before, it's not my example. You know, where's Esav buried? Where's Esav buried? Do we know where he's buried?
Buried?
Buried.
Where his grave is.
Where's he buried?
The same grave?
As who?
Machpelah?
Well, as the answer is his head. According to the Medrash, his head is in Machpelah, not the whole body. His head is in the Machpelah. It says that, but when Esau tried to stop Yaakov being buried there, one of Yaakov's chopped off his head, and the head rolled into Maras Machpelah. So that is interpreted as saying that Esav's head, his perceptions and understanding, were not small. It's just that as a person, he didn't control himself. And he wanted to be able to live the kind of life he did with those perceptions, whether he lived by them or not. And he didn't want to be secondary. He wanted to be primary. Now, the next thing I want to point out is in the other end of the parsha, another thought from the Shem Shmuel. Now, at the end of the parsha, after Yaakov takes the blessings from Esav, so Yitzchak sends Yaakov to Padan Aram to find a wife. And he tells him, don't marry any Canaanite girls. You go to your mother's family, you'll find a wife there. And the Torah says at the end that what did Esav saw that the women that he had married. Let me get to that. Let's find it. It's end of the parsha. Okay, end of the parsha. Perek Chav Ches, chapter 28, pasuk Ches, verse 8. Vayar Esav ki ra'os b'nais Canaan be'enei Yitzchak aviv. Esav saw that the daughters of Canaan, the Canaanite women, were bad, evil in the eyes of Yitzchak, his father. Vayelech Esav el Yishmael. Esav went to Yishmael. Vayikachas Machalas bas Yishmael ben Avram, and he took Machalas, the daughter of Yishmael, the son of Avram, Achais Nevayis, the sister of Nevayis, al Nashav, in addition to his wives, Loy Isha, for himself as a wife. So what happens? Yitzchak sends Yaakov, tells him not to take any Canaanite women, And then the pasuk says, Esav saw that the Canaanite women were not good in the eyes of his father Yitzchak. So what did he do? He went and he married Yishmael's daughter. Not Canaanite, Yishmael, son of Avram, Avram's family. Okay? And he married her in addition to his wives. Did he get rid of the wives because he realized that they were evil in the eyes of his father? No. But he took another wife, a wife who was not Canaanite. Now, if you read the Psukim, it says that Esav saw that they were bad. How did Esav see they were bad? Because Yitzchak told Yaakov not to marry the Canaanite women. And until then, he didn't realize that they were bad. It says in the parsha before that Esav took two wives, and they were Meiras Ruach, they were rebellious, they caused a lot of anguish to Yitzchak and Rivka. The pasuk says that before, right before it starts talking about when Yitzchak eyes couldn't see, and the whole story with the blessings. It says, Esav married these two women, and they were Meiras Ruach, they were rebellious, they caused a lot of anguish to Yitzchak and Rivka. And that he didn't see? Only now he realized it? Only now? So the Shem Shmuel wants to suggest that no, this is connected to what's going. It's connected in a way to what's going on. Esav seeing or realizing that these women were bad in his father's eyes, there is something that he realized now more than before. And that's connected to the whole story of the fact that Esav didn't get the blessings. How is that? So Esav in his mind was deserving of the blessings. Now, typically, our sages tell us, if we're assuming things were going to work out in a certain way, and things don't work out for you, things are going not the right way, what's a person supposed to do? What are you supposed to do when it's clear that that life is not going in the right direction for you? And you say to Hashem, you're wondering why it's happening. So what do our sages say you should do? You should pray. You should do tshuva. You should improve yourself. You should look at yourself and say, where do I need to improve in order for things to change? When things go rough, our sages say, Yefashrish b'maisav. You should look through your actions. Look at yourself and see what kind of improvement you make, and that would be a step towards improving your life situation. That is what a person is supposed to do. Well, here's Esav. He's expecting to get the blessings from Yitzchak. And what happens? He walks in and he finds out Yaakov took the blessings. Begs his father for a blessing, gets some kind of a blessing. But he clearly realizes he loses out. So what should Esav be doing next? What should he be doing now? He was expecting to get the blessings, and he knows these blessings are not just, magic from his father. It's because his father is righteous. It's because his father's righteousness and connection to Hashem. These are blessings that come from Hashem. So Esav should be saying to himself, what is it that Hashem is disappointed with me?
Right. He should be working on
he should be working on himself.
Right.
So what does he do? You know what the problem is? It's my wife. It's my wives. Now, without trying to make jokes right now, the Shem Shmuel explains is that, marrying Canaanite women, right? The Canaanites were from the descendants of Chum, the son of Noach. Chum was cursed, right, which is why Avram said to Eliezer, in last week's parsha, even though your daughter is maybe very righteous, but we cannot come together. An error, a blessed and a cursed can't come together. So Esav says to himself, you know why? You know what the problem is? The problem is I married Canaanites, which means my children are blemished. That's the problem here. And therefore, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to Yishmael's family, not Canaanites. And I'll marry a woman from there, and then I'll have children with the proper lineage, and then things will be good. Now, of course, he has to kill Yaakov also in order to get the blessings. That doesn't seem to be an issue. That's not an issue. But if there's some way that he's going to justify in his mind why things have gone wrong, and what is it that I need to do to change, it's not about him. It's about his wives. It's about him to the degree that, he married the wrong women. Okay, and now I'll marry the right woman. I'll have the children of proper lineage. They're not going to come from the cursed Canaanites, and everything will be good. So when it says here that he saw, so what happened now that he saw? The point is that when he saw, so he could have thought beforehand the Canaanite women, there's problems with them. Clearly, there's problems. There's problems. But okay, maybe it's not that bad. But now it's so far that Yitzchak tells Yaakov, no, go away from here. Don't take any woman from here. You got to go to your father's family. Go to your mother's family. Then already he realizes how bad they are, and that makes him think about what's really wrong with them, not him, them. And therefore he now goes to take another wife so that his children be the proper lineage. But again, it's not about him. It's about something external.
Right.
And therefore, the Shem Mishmuel of these two thoughts that we've shared is the fact that what we learn from Esav and Yaakov is the issue about Iker and Tafel, what needs to be primary in life and secondary in life. And also this idea of how Esav doesn't want to look at himself for self-improvement. He's always looking for things that are external from himself. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for listening.